On Tuesday, March 31st, 2015 at University of Houston, Students for Justice in Palestine at U of H presented the event Poetic Injustice, Writings on Resistance and Palestine. Speaker/poet Remi Kanazi, co-sponsored by BDS Houston. For more event details, please look at the video description.
First, I'll introduce the background of Remi. He's a poet, writer, and editor based in New York City. He's the author of Poetic Injustice, Writing on Resistance and Palestine. We'll be selling them after $15. His political commentary has been featured by news outlets throughout the world, including Al Jazeera and BBC Radio. He has also taught poetry workshops from Oklahoma to the West Bank. Right before I introduce or we welcome Remi, BDS Houston is going to introduce their organization. They actually helped us a lot with organizing this event, and they've been really supportive, and they're a group of awesome community members who get together and try to raise as much as awareness about BDS in our local community. So I wanted to welcome Nick.
Thanks, Huda. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name is Nick Sawaya. I'm part of BDS Houston. It's a small group of individuals in the community here in Houston that have been really active in trying to promote boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel. We'd like to welcome Remi here. On behalf of BDS Houston, we're honored and excited to be able to co-sponsor you with SJP, University of Houston. We're a small community, as you can see, but we're trying to grow it as much as possible. So we're really excited that you're here with us. For folks that have listened to Remi, I mean, you know, he is one of the best English poets that I've listened to that does, I would say, Palestinian resistance poetry. But it really comes from the heart. And you'll see for yourselves, we're all big fans here, and we're really excited to have you here. Just wanted to say a couple of words about BDS Houston as the organization. As I mentioned, several individuals got together in the summer of 2014 during the Gaza massacre, the aggression against Gaza in the summer of 2014. We got together because we said, enough is enough, right? I mean, the policies of Israel against Palestine were, almost genocidal. And so we decided to get together and do something about it at a grassroots level. And what we decided to focus on was boycott, divestment, and sanctions, because we believe that this is the best way for people to get involved at a grassroots level in a nonviolent way to affect change in Palestine. And so we encourage you guys to actually participate in BDS. We've got a sign-up sheet here for BDS Houston. There's a lot of work that we do, so if you're interested in understanding what BDS is all about, then please sign up to our announce list. We actually have one event that we're promoting hard right now, which is the Phoenicia petition that we're trying to circulate amongst people. What we're trying to do with Phoenicia, and as you guys know, Phoenicia is a nice supermarket that sells Middle Eastern goods and so on. We recently learned that they also sell Israeli products, including products from Israeli settlements. And that's not okay, because as we all know, Israeli settlements are against international law, and we'd like to actually put pressure on Phoenicia to de-shelve these products. And so what we did is we went and talked to the manager, discussed with them, and we're circulating a petition to de-shelve some of these products. We've got several hundred signatures right now. There's a petition that will circulate here as well. We highly encourage you guys. We encourage you guys to sign it if you agree that you'd like to de-shelve these types of products. With that, I'd like to welcome Remi once again and let him take the floor. Thank you.
All right, this is my second day in a row without a mic, which is okay because I think people are like, oh, you're totally going to be a really loud spoken word poet. You don't actually need a mic. But I have some tender pieces that I'm going to do tonight, and you want to hear the inflections and intonations. Anybody that's in the back, I guess I was walking around a little bit. The more toward the front you come, the more you're going to hear. I will project, because if I see you, it's like you're out in Gaza, and it's like, here, let's one safe solution. You come forward. Okay. So, holy water. We're going to use this. So I'm on tour, and I was just in Colorado City yesterday. I had no idea that was a college. It's in Colorado Springs. I don't know why you would go there instead of Denver, but they have a really kick-ass SJP. Just like Austin's really strong and Dallas is really strong, but it's nice to see Houston come up over the last couple years. So what I'm going to do tonight, I'll probably tell a story, that I think is kind of funny. I was on a couple comedy festivals. I think I'm funny, but I'm not. I won't speak this fast the whole time. Please laugh along to my jokes because I'm a poet and I may cry on the inside and the outside. Then I will probably do like a sad poem, and then a funny poem, then an angry poem, then a really angry poem, then a holy shit, I can't believe you just said that poem. Then we will hug, Star Trek, wave, eat some more pizza, and have a good night. I wrote a set list 10 seconds ago because I don't want to do the same thing every single day. What time is it? It's time to start. Okay, so a little bit about me. Wait, raise your hand if you know much about Palestine. Okay, cool. Raise your hand if you know about as much about Palestine as I know about cooking by watching Top Chef. No? I know what scallops look like now. Okay, I thought that was poetic. Now, another thing that you could do is, how many people here know much about BDS? Boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Okay, cool, so I won't have to do too much preface work. Now, if you like something, when you hear it, you can snap your fingers, you can clap your hands, don't throw pizza crust at me, I bruise easily. So let's start. I grew up in a small town in western Massachusetts. Now, in that small town, there were about 9,000 people. Of the 9,000 people in that town, I would say about 8,990 of them were white. Then there was my brown family, and we got like another brown family in the 8th grade. On top of that, I had this thing called a Palestinian mother. Now, this Palestinian mother was very proud to be Palestinian. What scared the living shit out of all the white children in the neighborhood is that she was proud to be Palestinian in public. Now, this is where it gets a little bit awkward. I was a fat, brown, one-eyebrow child going to Catholic school. That led to awkward conversations on the playground. What does this have to do with the first poem I'm going to do? Nothing, but sharing is caring. I like the Care Bears, and I wanted to share that with you. You can smile and laugh at my jokes. Do you like the pizza? Yeah? Are you excited about the performance? Don't eat the crust mid-poem, not like on a soft one, because I'll totally hear you crunching and it's going to throw me off. I'm just kidding. I hope you enjoy that. Yeah, okay. So, the first piece I'm going to do, normally I would start off with kind of like an angry poem, but I'm actually going to start off with a piece called A Poem for Gaza. Do I know you from Twitter? Yeah. Okay, yeah. Hey, how's it going? When you meet somebody that you know from Twitter, you should be like, hey, I am so-and-so from Twitter, because it just clicked when I saw, because when I was like close up with you, I was like, I don't know who you are. Now that I'm far away, I recognize your Twitter profile picture. Okay, nothing to do with the first poem. So, I wrote this first piece back in 2009, and I thought it would be fitting, because if anybody doesn't know, Israel bombed the Gaza Strip from 2008 and 2009, over 22 days, killing 1,400 Palestinians, the vast majority of them civilians. And we don't need to recount too much of what happened over the summer when Israel killed 2,300 Palestinians in 50 days. It shelled hospitals, schools, mosques, UN shelters, again and again, bringing devastation to the doorsteps of 1.8 million people living in an open-air prison. So this first piece is pretty kind of standard, and it's called A Poem for Gaza. In parentheses is it. I have allergies. Retake care of those. I never knew death until I saw the bombing of a refugee camp. Craters filled with disfigured elbows and splattered torsos, but no sign of a face. The only impression a fading scream. I never understood pain until a 7-year-old girl clutched my hand, stared up at me with soft brown eyes waiting for answers. I didn't have it. I had dry pens in my back pocket that couldn't fill pages of understanding or resolution. In her other hand, she held the key to her grandmother's house. But I couldn't unlock the cell that caged her older brothers. They said, we slingshot dreams so the other side will feel our father's presence. A craftsman built homes in areas where no one was building, and when he fell, he was silent. A 50 caliber bullet tore through his neck, shredding his vocal cords too close to the wall. His hammer must have been a weapon. He must have been a weapon. Encroaching on settlement hills and demographics, so his daughter studies mathematics. 7 explosions times 8 bodies equals 4 congressional resolutions. 7 Apache helicopters times 8 Palestinian villages equals silence and a second Nakba. Our birth rate minus their birth rate equals 1C and 400 villages re-erected. 1 state plus 2 peoples. And she can't stop crying. never knew revolution or the proper equation, tears at the pages with her fingertips, searching for answers but only has teachers, looks to the sky and sees stars and David demolishing squalor with hellfire missiles. She thinks back words and memories of his last hug before he turned and fell. Now she pumps dirty water from wells while settlements divide and conquer. And her father's killer sits beachfront with European vernacular. She thinks back words while they think back words of obscene notions and indigenous confusion. This is our land, she said. She's 7 years old. This is our land, she said. And she doesn't need history books or a schoolroom teacher. She has these walls, this sky, her refugee camp. She doesn't know the proper equation, but she sees my dry pens, no longer waiting for my answers, just holding her grandmother's key, searching for ink. What time is it here? Like starts at 6, so I'm gonna come at 7. I'm watching you like a hawk. Enjoy the pizza, it is tasty. Okay, that is literally the happiest poem I'm gonna do tonight. Awesome. The next piece I'm gonna do, we're gonna go off Palestine, do another old piece, and then get into some new stuff. I'll make it a BDS heavy set tonight, because we like BDS, we'll talk about that. I'm on the organizing committee for the U.S. campaign for the academic and cultural boycott of Israel. I work with the BDS Arts Coalition in New York City, as well as Adela New York, which is a boycott, divestment, and sanctions group. That is awesome. Education is great, advocacy is great, action is even better. So this next poem, okay, it's a fun new one. It's called, like, You Were Not That Badass, aka Dear Hashtag, like, Twitter Revolutionary. Here's the thing. Don't be like the person in this poem. If you are like the person in this poem, stop being that person. If you are the person in this poem, chances are you won't know you're the person in this poem. But this is not, so I like utilizing Facebook and Twitter. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Tumblr. I'm not on Snapchat because I'm 33. I feel like that would be creepy. But I like the social media. So this is not for like radical conversation or organizing spaces online that utilize social media, but this is more for like the dumbass living in their parents' basement. So don't be this person. I hope you enjoy this poem. Does anyone mind swearing? I apologize in advance. But the rest are non-sweary poems. I have a radio version, but it's just not as good. You were not that badass. You were not so cool because you regurgitate Frantz Fanon behind a computer screen. You read the same 2 books everyone else did. It is noticeable. Stop it. You are not above the petty bullshit. If you were tweeting, I am above the petty bullshit. If you were, you'd probably stop Twitter policing everyone and start working on non-petty bullshit. If you say things like, I don't tweet for followers, you probably tweet for followers. It is obvious. Stop it. You are not an expert on everything. I get that you vacation for 2 weeks in Egypt, love falafel, and have your very own Huffington Post blog account with 7 million other people, but that is not expertise or due diligence. If you can't point to the country you are tweeting about on the map, you should probably shut the fuck up. Not everything is Iraq. Not everything is Palestine. The only thing that is Nazi Germany is Nazi Germany. Stop with the unhelpful comparisons, white guy shouting at a demo. You are not being helpful. And if you think I'm an asshole by the end of this poem, it's probably true, because this is technically a I'm above the petty bullshit poem. But seriously, I am. Critiquing shouldn't become the goal, a game, a life, like Candy Crush and Angry Birds and other games I'm not cool enough to know about. Twitter has never been and will never be the revolution. Yes, I tweeted a few times about Miley Cyrus twerking, or her lack of twerking, or her awkward racism, or why so few people initially focused on how creepy Robin Thicke is. See there, I said it, I'm not above it. But at some point, we have to realize our rubbernecking is slowing down traffic. Movements move. Activists extend beyond 140 characters. We are not the main characters. Most of us are in the belly of the beast challenging empire with privilege. So stop wearing your intellectual sunglasses at night. Somebody got that. Right? Under 30? Okay. So stop wearing your intellectual sunglasses at night and build beyond the next soundbite. Appreciate that what we say and do and how we say and do it matters. The best critic isn't the one simply wagging the finger the hardest. Yoda was chill. You should try to be more like him. I'm gonna end this poem now. You should totally follow me on Twitter. Okay, you're an easy audience. How's it going, front row? You having a good time? I don't have a mic to stick in your face. I don't need to encroach on your territory. It's very Israeli settler of me. That pizza's now mine. Okay. I'm just kidding. That's not how it would be. I'd actually own the pizza shop. So the next piece I'm going to do is a happy one. I apologize in advance, Zionists. You might not enjoy this set. So the next piece I'm going to do is called Before the Machetes Are Raised. Now, I moved to New York City 4 months before 9/11. And when those two towers came down, there was so much vitriolic language. There was that, we got to go and turn that place into a parking lot. We got to nuke them and start over. And post 9/11, there was the systematic dehumanization of the Arab and Muslim male. And it's something that had happened long before to the Black and Latino male. And before that to the indigenous male. And there's this kind of idea that if we kill 17 people in Afghanistan tomorrow, it's not really a big deal because they were in the Taliban. Or they were friends with the Taliban. Or one time they saw this YouTube video and it said Taliban on it. So we bombed the living hell out of their village, killed 17 people, and whittled them down to best case scenarios, statistics, and numbers. And when you can whittle people down to statistics and numbers, it is so much easier to drop that bomb, to pull that trigger, and to occupy that village. Now, as a Palestinian, whether we're standing against the drone bombing of Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia, or occupation, apartheid, and settler colonialism in Palestine, or we're standing against the killing of Mike Brown, Eric Garner, Renisha McBride, Ayanna Jones, racist drug laws, mandatory minimums, the kicking out of 2 million undocumented people over the last 5 years, the continued exploitation and appropriation of native land and resources here, or going beyond race and talking about sexual violence and gender violence on college campuses, or transphobia in our local communities. What binds socially conscious people together is working against systems of oppression. So for me, when it comes to the idea of Palestine, it's about challenging a system of oppression and saying, no people should live under occupation, no people should live under apartheid, no people should live under a system that seeks domination of one people over another, whether it's on this continent or overseas. So this next poem is called Before the Machetes Are Raised. It's fucking humid here. I'm tired by poem 3. Normally I'd be like Emily Dickinson or Ezra Pound, just not even breaking a sweat by poem 7. Are you taping this? This is not good YouTube dialogue. Fuck Zionism, boycott Israel. I'm a poet, so nobody can fuck with me. It's not like I can't get fired, so I can say whatever the hell I want. I mean, I could not get invited to the White House, but let's be honest. That huge grant, it was in my mailbox. I just rescinded it. I want to stand back here for this one. I'm disgusted by terrorism. Backwards animals who have no value for human life. Produce propaganda videos to disseminate their message. Prey on the weakest in society. Infect children. Recruit fighters. Like expendable ants in the ideological struggle. You know who I'm talking about. Soldiers who drop bunker-busting bombs on mosques and universities, decry the Middle East, but follow authority closer than dictatorial rule, think stripes and codes, rather than decency and humanity give them worth in this world. I've seen one too many Facebook invites by jingoistic kids I went to high school and grade school with. They couldn't wait to get in some trigger time. Hunt down pal heads and hajis like venison. And when some Marine's grenade launcher catapults 120 mini bombs per minute, takes out 17 houses and 14 schoolgirls, I'm supposed to feel bad that he can't see his wife and daughter on Christmas. Respect this service when he comes back to the States, a murderer who destroyed a country full of daughters and wives that'll never see Eid. We're so quick to honor the troops, but don't dare mention the widows. The trembling father crying, immersed in his wife's charred flesh, a fetus blown out of her stomach. The soldier said, kicking down the door was too risky. Where's the love for the 25-year-old Iraqi man whose car was riddled with American-made bullets, pain-faced and surprised look like grabbing for sky, falling at 110-story towers? As long as we don't affect our shit, we'll shut out Darfur, Rwanda, and the need for antiretrovirals. Look at human beings as aid packages who can't compete, rather than ravaged lands perfecting paradigms of imperialism and propaganda. Where is that right-wing Zionist trying to save the Congo, combating lead Leviathan in Angola, genocide in northern Uganda? Where's the humanity before the machetes are raised and proxy forces put into place? King, Mandela, and Gandhi aren't meant to be easy reference platitudes to make you feel better at night, help you forget that uncomfortable poem Americans don't want to face. We'll worship American idols, but have no value for human life. And yet, all I hear are 20-somethings telling me they just aren't into politics. I wonder what they'd say at their parents' eulogy. After they were blown up into 386 different pieces, I'm sure they wouldn't discuss things. Because politics, it isn't their thing. Politics isn't our thing. While we reach out for freedom and justice, we're defined as political to undermine our suffering, create notions of two sides and equal conflict, cover up our dispossession, and burn down villages. We're political. So you can ignore us, delegitimize and forget us. But we're human beings gracing the window pane, reflecting stillborn images. We're voices, chime in choirs and temples. We're life that won't be forgotten. We're here, and we won't go away. We're the world's shiver. It's cold out here. And whether you recognize it or not, we're coming inside. Hi, Houston. It's really nice to be here. You're so much better than Dallas. Dallas is whack. You know, what's really messed up is I go to Dallas and I say the same thing about Houston. But for right now, for one night only, no, I'm just kidding. You guys are awesome. So the next piece I'm going to do, let's do a divestment piece. The next piece I'm going to do is called This Divestment Bill Hurts My Feelings. Okay, for anybody that doesn't know. Sorry, I had to wear my little brother's t-shirt today because I ran out. Just kidding, I don't have a little brother. Okay, so in 2005, for anybody that doesn't know, Palestinian civil society called for boycott, divestment, and sanctions against the state of Israel until it complied with three basic demands. Number one, ending the occupation of all Arab land, so millions of people today live under direct military occupation. We want that to end. Number two, the right of return for Palestinian refugees, so 750,000 were ethnically cleansed from 1947 to 1949. 531 villages were destroyed, and waves of ethnic cleansing have taken place throughout. And number three, equality for all Palestinians living inside of the state of Israel who face more than 50 laws that systematically discriminate against them in terms of education, marriage, and other sectors of society. So, what you've seen on college campuses, we've had about 30 divestment bills on college campuses throughout the United States. Now, not just targeting Israeli occupation, but also targeting the prison industrial complex, fossil fuels. Then you've had other awesome campaigns, standing with undocumented rights, sweatshop campaigns, and so forth. So what is divestment for anybody that doesn't know? Let's say your university invests in Caterpillar. Now, Caterpillar sends over armored and D9 militarized bulldozers to the Israeli state. Those bulldozers are then used to bulldoze homes, uproot olive trees, more than 1 million since 1967, and kill American citizens like Rachel Corrie. So basically what students are saying, as they have with other struggles, is that we don't want to be complicit with systems of injustice. We don't want to profit off of death. We live in a country that gives Israel $3.4 billion a year in military aid. We act as their veto inside and outside of the UN. We have preferential trade agreements with an apartheid state, and a lot of other mechanisms of support for oppressing people. Now, what happens on campus is like, you're like, hey, we should divest from companies that are profiting off human rights abuses. And then like pro-Israel students will be like, this divestment bill hurts my feelings, and like we need to come together and talk, and like why are you singling Israel out? And it really hurts my feelings. And other bullshit. So, we're gonna explain why that's fucked up, and manipulative, and shitty and wrong. Through a poem called This Divestment Bill Hurts My Feelings. Now, so this poem is in two voices. The first voice is like the awesome SJP voice that is like divest / me. Obviously not me because I'm 33. That would make me a super duper, like a double PhD, a super duper duper senior, something like really weird. The other voice is like the stand with us, like we, you know, like if you divest, then my soul's gonna die. So this is called, you'll hear the different voices. If you mistake me for the Zionist, that might be awkward, so don't do that. Thank you, I appreciate that comment. I actually hear what you said. I'm awkward, it doesn't go away. You can laugh a little, this one's a happier one. Happy justice. This divestment bill, it hurts my feelings. That Caterpillar bulldozer ended life in the body of an American citizen, drove her bones into the ground while a company cashed in on the sale. The claws of D9 bulldozers unearthed the livelihood of occupied Palestinians, uprooting their graveyards to make way for illegal settlements. But we need a positive campus climate. While HP stock rises on division, producing technology to segregate Palestinians, biometric IDs at checkpoints, enhancing the naval blockade of an open-air prison, Palestinians on campus listen to words like positive, climate, hurt feelings, knowing their tuition invests in companies raining terror on loved ones. That suffering, like their voices, is non-existent to student board members looking for cushy jobs at top 5 law firms. But this divestment bill, it's divisive. The Montgomery bus boycott, divisive. The Great Boycott, one-sided. Abolishing slavery, radical. Nelson Mandela, a terrorist. Indigenous, savages, women's suffrage, complicated. Desegregation, provocative. Hiroshima security, internment camps of necessity, Bantustan's autonomy, Iraq liberation, Palestine barren. There is always going to be an excuse. Catchphrases, talking points, strip away names and faces. We are being militant, unreasonable. There's context to this suppression. The word apartheid, it makes you feel uncomfortable. It's apartheid, by definition. Fits the 73 Convention. By law, it is a crime against humanity. 2 sets of laws for 2 people. Labor, land ownership, access to education. 50 laws of discrimination. 66 years of colonization. 27,000 homes demolished. Nearly 1 million arrested since 67. Whoa, whoa, whoa. No one said Israel doesn't have problems. But why the singling out on campuses? You mean like Darfur, Tibet, South Africa, sweatshops, Coca-Cola, animal testing, the Keystone Pipeline, the prison industrial complex, fossil fuels, teacher unions, university cuts, and bottled water? The real question, why are you singling out any injustice for protection? Let me get the next one for you. Israel is democratic. Democratic like coal is clean, Miller Lite is the same great taste less filling, and McDonald's salads are healthy. These are not imagined scenarios. Our tuition dollars are profiting off of death. Divestment is the next step. This is not about a nation or a people, but what's being done to people in our names, with our currency. This university will not liberate anyone, but it can choose to cease making a buck off of misery. Vote yes for divestment. No to appeasement. Affirming injustice isn't positive for any climate. Okay, we just divested. What is it? Cougs? What is it? That's like weird. I don't know. I don't know any of the mascots to the universities I went to, but I'm pretty sure it sounded less corny than that. What does Coug stand for? Cougars. Oh, okay. That's cute. So, moving on. I'm just kidding. Rule number 1, don't pick on the places you come to. So the next piece I'm going to do, what do I want to do? I have a new piece on dialogue. Should we do a piece on campus dialogue? That's a good one. Yeah, okay. I don't want to go on too long because then you'll want to like boycott and divest from me. Okay, the next piece I'm going to do is this. It's called Refugee. I used to do a poem called Nakba. So my parents and grandparents are refugees from 1948. My mother's side is from Jaffa. My father's side is from Haifa and Nazareth, all of which are now part of the state of Israel. And my grandmother was pregnant with my mom when they were kicked out of Palestine. And speaking with my grandmother, that was kind of my first entry point into Palestine. And everything was always Jaffa, Jaffa, Jaffa. It was always about return. It was always about home. She never felt at home in Lebanon. She never felt at home in the United States. And if you get a chance to speak to a refugee community, and that refugee community doesn't have to be Palestinian, it is a world into beauty and eloquence and heartbreak and strength in a way that I could never properly put down on paper. So this poem is more about a Palestinian woman's experience in the West Bank, recounting some of the stories from her father. And this is supposed to be soft, so I'll try not to elevate my voice too much. I see, people in the back, and I was a terrible actor once upon a time, and they always tell you to project. I mean, I was in the chorus of the Sound of Music. How do you solve a problem like Maria? I don't fucking know. How do you solve a problem like Israel? That was off the top. I'm a poet. I think I'm way funnier than my audience think I am. Okay. She's never seen the sea. Sunlight imprinted on her father's skin, waves crashing at his feet, smile tattooed underneath boyish grin, snapping pictures, or closing eyelids. Gunfire in the distance, soldiers down the block, heads hanging low, afraid the barrel may turn in their direction. His face flush on recollection, the same waves that had clenched like an angry jaw as his mother pushed him forward like a train car. Watched his neighbor drown. Tears streaming, eyes connecting, screams muffled as inhalation suffocated lungs, muscles weary, skin pruning. Barely a boy, knowing he would never return. An older man, born in Akka, looked dapper at dinner parties, looked helpless that day, terrified, his body revolting against death, a pool intent on swallowing him, so many rushing to get on boats departing. Who'd have known? This gulf would have been their deathbed. She has been beaten, ID checked, body thrown to the ground, fists and feet pummeled, tender flesh, shoulder broken, heart too many times. Tear gas inscribed on her lungs, she wrote back on her breath that the canister's defeat is near. These hills are ours, she told me. Before the Europeans and Brooklynites, before the swimming pools, army jeeps, and barbed wire, before the talks, roadmaps, and Swiss cheese plants, before declarations rewrote history, those hills meant footprints, and that can't be erased. Like village massacres can't be erased. Like broken bones policies can't be erased. Like the screams ringing in her father's ears can't be erased. We're the boat returning to dock. We're the footprints on the northern trail. We're the iron coloring the soil. We cannot be erased. Okay, how long have I been performing for? 7-Eleven. Originally 7-Eleven. So I'm gonna do this poem next. Sometimes you write a poem and it has a really nice flow to it and it's complex and you wrote it over a year. Other times you have a conversation with someone, they say something really racist, you're like, wow, that was really racist, and you write a poem about them. That is this poem. I was performing at a cultural night, and this cultural night had a very large bar. And so two very drunk people came up to me afterwards and were kind of like, "You're so brown and angry." And I was like, "You're a white supremacist." I didn't actually say that because like they were like really drunk and they were wobbling, and it's like, do you hold them up? Do you not want to get vomited on or punched in the face? So I wrote this poem about them called Tone It Down. And then maybe I'll do like the piece on dialogue and then end on normalization. We'll keep it boycotting tonight. Yeah. Normally that's a lot. It's like pasta, pasta, pasta. They're like, we need some new potatoes. It's not my favorite. You should be funny. Tell jokes. Soften your message. Everyone likes humor. You're normal in conversation, but your poems are so angry. Angry. Breathe. Slow down. Cut the platitudes. Neatly fit packages of entertainment to make them laugh. Barack Obama just murdered a wedding party full of Muslims. That mother hunched over her son's dismembered body in Gaza, tore divots into her skin just so she could feel life again. Let me put on a clown costume, sit you on my knee, and tell you a story, one that you could never relate to, because your family never went through it. Once upon a time, during the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. Once upon a time, birth defects went up 500% in Fallujah. Once upon a time, they beat his body so bad he bled internally, carved ragged into his bare thigh, and pissed on his wounded flesh. You said nothing. Did nothing. Is that what you want me to say? That you have so little value for human life that I need to put on a clown costume to entertain you? Let you know how this country was founded, who was founded for, and how we both still benefit off that privilege? No, that's not what you want. You want a funny story. So here's one. Taxpayer £1,000 dollar signs drop on 8-story buildings. Reservations aren't something you make before dinner. Leaflets on your windshield means you may bury the dead by morning. Here's another scream. Refugees die in camps they were pushed into, aren't allowed to leave for chemotherapy. Grandmothers can still feel the rigid earth digging under their feet as they scrambled north. Does that make you feel uncomfortable? Like cluster bombs sealing the legs of children in South Lebanon, how much strength does it take to climb atop the world and not give a damn? No, guy that came up to me after the show and asked me why I couldn't be more like the apolitical Jewish comic that came on after me. No, I can't be that guy. And no, you wouldn't be asking me this question if half your family died rushing to get on boats as people fired from behind. This is not a poem. This is a reminder to all drunken dumbasses who come up to me after a show. Slavery isn't funny, feminism isn't angry, and the dumb shit that comes out of your mouth isn't okay just because you ended it with a smile. And if this does make you feel uncomfortable, recognize that there are tens of millions of people who have felt more discomfort due to US policy or dictatorships we've propped up in 3 seconds than you will in a lifetime. So next time you see someone spilling their heart on stage, give them a moment before you try to stomp on it. Recognize that there may be meaning behind words and not every beat is for a finger snap or your personal approval. But if you're really in the mood for some critique, do yourself a favor, look inward and keep that finger pointed and work on your own shit, because I'd rather be labeled an angry brown poet than an apathetic American who turned away just long enough to never actually have to give a damn. Where'd you go? So I'm going to end with these two. Yeah, we like BDS Houston. We have BDS Houston, we have SAC BDS, and we have Philly BDS, and we have Adele in New York, and it's really good. So when I first started performing on college campuses, it was a very different experience. Like, you could barely say the word Palestine without being called an anti-Semite. There was like 10 groups that were organizing for Palestine, 5 of them were Arab Students Associations. Today, thank you so much. Today, you have 150 SJPs throughout the United States. You have community organizations, national organizations. And one of the most beautiful things was being at UCLA the night of the divestment vote. And prior to voting for divestment, they divested from the prison industrial complex. And then you had at UC Santa Barbara, right after they voted for divestment, there was a resolution standing with undocumented communities. And more you're seeing today, it's not just about the issue of Palestine. When you look at Elbit Systems working on the US-Mexico border, also in Palestine, G4S out in California prisons, also in Palestine, in the UK, and elsewhere. Even if you look at HP, yes, in Palestine, but also working with the Department of Homeland Security. So these corporations don't just like to oppress one people, they like to spread the oppressive love throughout the world. So the next piece I'm going to do is called An Open Letter to Campus Zionist Groups and University Chancellors. It's a love poem. Now, a lot of times people will be like, why can't we just have dialogue? Now, the problem isn't conversation, right? We have conversation all the time. If you actually look at the divestment resolutions on college campuses, there's a lot of dialogue and back and forth. But what you actually have is the co-optation of the word dialogue, right? It's to say we need to come together to reaffirm systems of oppression. We need to undermine SJP. We need to undermine BDS. So it's not actually used as a tool to have conversation with two people. It's actually used as a form of dominating a group that's fighting against systems and structures of racism and oppression. So this is called An Open Letter to Campus Zionist Groups and University Chancellors. And I hope you enjoy it. I've only performed this a few times, so if it sucks, check it out in the fall. The university needs to update your chairs. It's outdated like Israel Apartheid. This conversation is a dialogue. My Facebook post, that comment back, the email chain, the article in response to the article, the soon-to-be Q&A, the debate in the quad, yesterday's phone call, that time I smiled, said hello, and held the door for a member of Bruins for Israel. You know where we can't have any kind of dialogue? In Palestine, because I'm not allowed to return. Because ethnically cleansed Palestinians aren't allowed to return. Because ethnically cleansed Palestinians returning would put ethno-religious supremacy in jeopardy. It's easy to talk about your comfort level when there isn't a checkpoint stopping us from meeting. No wall blocking tonight's event from happening. I don't get to drop white phosphorus on your dorm room and call it security if our chat doesn't go well. So let's have a thought experiment on your tolerance. Would Hillel J Street, Olive Tree Initiative, Seeds of Peace, and One Voice come to a meeting to dialogue on whether or not Jews should have equal rights in America? Whether or not Jews should be stuffed into open-air prisons in America? Whether or not Jews should face checkpoints before coming onto campus in America? No! You wouldn't want to come to that meeting, because it sounds like obscene white supremacist bullshit now, doesn't it? This situation is about as two-sided as drowning puppies in a bathtub. Israel is the aggressor, the occupier, the ethnic cleanser, and dominating force from the river to the sea. So don't ask me to indulge racism. That is not dialogue. That is not moving things forward. That is the status quo. It's the bomb's blast, the silence of solitary confinement. The academy in America was built on white supremacy, and I'm not looking to replicate the process. You want to hug over justice? I'll stretch my arms and fingertips so wide my knees buckle. But I saw you read a prepared question off your Android, prepped by Stand With Us, given talking points to derail the discussion. You don't want dialogue. You want domination. And that's not something I can offer you. Most administrations don't care about campus climate. They care about donors and empty email boxes, houses made of sand willing to crumble at the first sight of rain, overbloated salaries and egos, over-anxious trigger fingers, willing to throw as many black and brown bodies under the bus as need be. So, Student Council Y, so Chancellor X, challenge us. Student Council Y, let your backbone fold on itself. Administrator Z, tell me about climate, while artillery shells eviscerate natives you never cared to learn about. Because students are coming, and they are stopping, cowering, caving to veiled threats, strict funding, and attacks on their organizations. You made a miscalculation. The road to freedom is not through the academy, but these students, armed with more passion than donor funding lining your pockets, are sure as hell gonna smash your roadblocks. So, like I said, I'm going to end with this because, I don't want you to boycott me. But I can't just end with this, super angry poem without, cutting it with, 3 short 3-line poems. I have this book, it's called Poetic Injustice, Writings on Resistance and Palestine. My mom said this is the coolest thing to come out since One Direction. R.I.P. Zing out. Okay. It was hard tears for me too. So this also comes with a CD. So it's like, wow, you're really angry at the stoplight today. Nope, it's just Remi with 15 spoken word poetry tracks bumping on your stereo, scaring the community. We take cash, and I also have Square. We can talk about smashing American capitalism after you buy this with your credit card. My mom also said the economy is shit, you're probably not going to get a job, so you should buy a couple of these, put them under your bed. You can sell them on eBay for like 4 times the price because it comes with a signature. And I always tell people, if you are anti-Zionist, it's cool, you should grab one. If you're Zionist, you should grab 2, just so in case you wanted to make it sink in. Yeah. So I'm actually finishing up my next collection, which comes out in September. So I'm trying to read a few of these for the last time. So in this collection, there's a lot of page poetry, but you don't actually have to buy a book. We might be up here or outside. If after the Q&A, you didn't feel like asking a question in the Q&A, you can just come say hi and talk or whatever. But in the book, there are 48 3-line poems for Palestine, split up into 4 different sections, each one to signify one of my displaced grandparents in 1948. And I'm just going to read 3 or 4 and then end with a super angry poem. This from a section called Najla. He lifted up his shirt, showed me 2 bullets that pierced his shoulder, lifted up his pant leg, showed me where a tear gas canister shattered his kneecap, never touched a gun or picked up a rock. His loud voice, more powerful than any cannon. And for anybody that doesn't know, but years back, there was an Israeli occupation soldier that was being held in Gaza, and this is in reference to that. In Gaza, an Israeli soldier remains in prison. The world knows his name and the conditions to set him free. 7,700 Palestinians wallow in Israeli dungeons. The world cannot mention their names because it never bothered to learn them. And I'll end with a section from Leonie. I don't know, is any Lebanese people in the audience? What's up, little Lebanon? Okay. I have a lot of family in Hamra. So there was an iconic image that came out in 2006. It was 2 little Israeli girls riding on missiles with a message that said, "With love." Those missiles were then used on the civilian population in Lebanon. This is in reference to that. Missiles said, "With love." I fall to where they hit. Charred limbs, stained tears, rotting corpses. No love in sight. In these last. A pregnant woman dies at a checkpoint. Sometimes a hand in the face is as powerful as a pistol. And this last one. She closes her eyes, smells the sea salt, takes in a deep breath, and feels the wind hug her arms as her father once did. For a split second, she imagines they've returned, where she was born, where she belongs. Whoever just wooed, thank you very much. By the end, sometimes people lose the woo. You were a late bloomer, and I really appreciate that. All right, I'm just inattentive. The last piece I'm going to do is a love poem for Tel Aviv. It's called Normalize This. For anybody, I actually wear this t-shirt, and for other t-shirts that don't fit me in the poem, and it's like my eyebrows are going like caterpillars running across my face. It's a scene. You should totally check it out. And also, this tie doesn't feel hurts my feelings is a video, and it makes me look cool because an animator, Suhan Lafar, who's also a kick-ass Palestinian hip-hop artist, did the video. So this last piece, for anybody that doesn't know what normalization is, I mean, I don't care what your gender is, your sexuality is, your ethnicity, where you were born. If you're working against systems of oppression, I can get down with that. You have groups like Boycott from Within, so it's an Israeli group calling for boycott, divestment, and sanctions. They work on cultural boycott, I work on cultural boycott. Look, we can collaborate against injustice. But for anybody that doesn't know what normalization is, it's basically the bringing together of Israelis and Palestinians in a non-anti-apartheid format without making any distinction between occupier and occupied, oppressor and oppressed, those implementing a system of apartheid, and those forced to live under it, essentially presenting a false symmetry. Now, a lot like the dialogue initiatives that you'll see on your college campuses, you have a whole branding department within the Israeli government that is essentially trying to utilize art to whitewash systems of oppression. And a lot of times it's bringing together Israelis and Palestinians for like a hip-hop for peace night. Now, you'll see it utilized on your college campuses as well. So again, it's not about having conversation. It's not about us sitting down and eating dinner. It's about whether it's a state, whether it's a community organization, or whether it's a university, co-opting and utilizing these forms and tactics to reaffirm structures of oppression. So this is called Normalize This. Let's all get together and work against oppression. Nothing is normal about occupation. Nothing normal about apartheid, ethnic cleansing, siege, blockade, settler-only roads, bombing water wells, schools, mosques, and UN buildings. Nothing normal about putting a civilian population on a diet, paying non-indigenous colonizers to settle land that is already populated, rewriting the Nakba with each stolen childhood, trying to desensitize the bullet holes and claw marks put into the bodies of Bassem Abu Rahmeh and Rachel Corrie. No, I don't want to normalize with you. I don't want to hug, have coffee, talk it out, break bread, sit around the campfire, eat s'mores, and gush about how we're all the same. I don't want to share the stage, co-write a poem, submit to your anthology, talk about how art, instead of justice, can forge a better path. I don't want to indulge your amnesia about a glorious past. Have a therapy session on two sides with equal grievances. The only thing barren is your moral capacity. Blooming a settler colonial state with appropriated culture, I will not fight for your privilege, nor will I seek to normalize it. Your dialogue group, it's a breeding ground for injustice. Just look at the board members in the ZOA sponsorship. Zionism is a real demographic threat, infecting the minds of millions with racism. They were hooded in the South, pushing darker nations into Bantustans, jailing young men in H blocks in Northern Ireland. In case you missed the hint, I don't want to pretend all is okay, or that bombs dropped on Gaza don't have a manufacturer, the pilot doesn't have a nationality, or somehow Shimon Peres is any different than Avigdor Lieberman. It's not just the occupation, stupid. It's a right of return, equality for all Palestinians. It's a transformation from a racist, exclusivist, supremacist state to a nation for all of its citizens. You deserve nothing more than equality, which means more than African refugees are provided in South Tel Aviv. You are the shining light on a settlement hill, reminding the world that racism often comes in nice packaging. Guess what? We don't give the Sudan $3.4 billion a year in military aid. Don't have preferential trade agreements with North Korea. Don't call Iran a democracy. Israel, you're a proxy for empire. A 1950s ethnocracy trapped in 21st century clothing, yes. You're singled out with aid, weapons, and UN vetoes in your favor. Did I hurt your feelings? Oh, it's not done. Did I hurt your feelings? Almost. Should we hug after the show? Do these words hurt more than, I don't know, bombs dropped on Gaza? White phosphorus eating the flesh of children. I am not the bad guy. You're defending the bad system. Your words and actions have consequences. You're either with oppression or you're against it. I didn't write history, and sure as hell didn't choose for you to stand on the wrong side of it. Your system of oppression, it is coming to an end. And whether you recognize it or not yet, It'll be liberating for you too. Thank you so much. It's like 42 degrees in New York. I think we might do a little Q&A, and then I feel like it's not good outside and the lights aren't on that much, so we can, like I said, we can sign books afterwards, or if you just have a question or want to say hi, yeah. But I guess we can do some questions if anybody has questions, and we have a facilitator. My favorite color is gray. Let's get it out of the way. I don't know if gray actually is a color, but it's my favorite one.
Any questions?
What are you currently working on? You said you have something new. You're preparing for something new?
So yeah, so I have my next collection of poetry, which comes out in September with a really awesome publisher, and we haven't announced it yet, but I think we are in the next week or two. And it's basically just my next book. Like a bunch of the pieces that half the pieces I did tonight will be in it. Plus, like a lot of other new kind of concepts. I mean, about Palestine, but also about U.S. militarism and racism and kind of happy stuff across the board. So basically, another collection of poetry that will hopefully be even better. Well, not better. I shouldn't say the last one was good, but like a positive direction course in philosophy.
It is good, actually, just so you know.
What?
No, you said you don't know if your book is good. I'm saying it is good, definitely.
You sound like my mom. I like her.
Okay, my question is, can you talk a little bit about how you got involved in poetry and got started and kind of got to this level where you are today?
Sure. Okay, so like I said before, I moved to New York City 4 months before 9/11. And I don't know, people are like, I don't think you're Arab, so I'm gonna say really racist shit around you. And I was like, that's fucked up. And so when 9/11 happened, I didn't know how to kind of articulate a response. And today we're seeing this kind of strong resurgence of Islamophobia that post 9/11 was very much like Arabs, Muslims, and it's like, oh, Sikh people, we're just going to throw you in the mix because we're racist Americans and we can't tell the difference. And so I just started reading everything I could, from Edward Said to Howard Zinn to Angela Davis, learning about what was going on in Palestine. I was already kind of knowledgeable, but not active. And then I eventually started writing about Middle East politics, and there were probably like 50 other people that were writing articles, and like 43 of them were probably doing it better. So I felt like, what are you doing? You're just like writing to write. You're not kind of adding anything to the conversation. And in 2004, my brother and sister took me to go see Def Poetry Jam on Broadway. And that was the first time I saw poets like Suhar Ahmed perform live, Stacey Ann Chen, and so many other people that were not necessarily saying the word Palestine, but were talking about social justice and making connections in really badass, amazing poetry. And so I literally went home and wrote a very horrible spoken word piece that night. And then it got less horrible over time, went to an open mic, a slam. And then like I said before, there weren't many student groups. And then the massacre on Gaza happened in 2008 and 2009, and there was this kind of like surge of SJPs. And I felt like the average 19-year-old didn't necessarily want to read an op-ed, but they would listen to a spoken word piece. And so for me, it was kind of a way that I could present a political message or an activist organizing message through a cultural medium.
I know you guys have more.
I'll just start picking on you, like.
So Remi, from your experience, anecdotally, I know you've been doing this for a while. You've been coming on university campuses quite often. Have you seen an increase, let's say, in student activism focused on Palestine, whether of BDS variety or other variety? And what do you say to nascent groups that are kind of trying to build that momentum? Houston is one of these communities where we're trying to build a little bit of momentum with people. What do you say to them in order to become more active?
Yeah, look, I would say this, that it can't just be Hampshire College divesting or the UC system or, and when all of those kind of victories happen, that sparked a lot of energy among new groups. I went to the SJP National Conference a couple of years ago. Florida Atlantic University had only done 2 events. They came to the national conference. Then they were having a 5-event Israeli Apartheid week that I was at 6 months later. But it can't just be LA, Chicago, New York City. It's got to be Jacksonville, Florida, Norman, Oklahoma, and we need to really get people kind of engaged across the country. What I would also say is that, you know, it's essential that we make connections, and not because we want to coalition build, but because there's an immense amount of injustice happening here. So, you know, some of the most inspiring things I've seen, like so for divestment at UCLA, you had the African Student Chair and the Black Students Union, MECHA, Chicano organization on campus, Armenian Students Association, the Queer Alliance, South Asian groups, white socially conscious people, Jewish Voice for Peace, Israeli Refuseniks. I mean, everybody was kind of coming together and then taking that energy, whether it's for divestment from the prison industrial complex or sweatshop campaigns or fighting against university cuts. I mean, a lot of folks in this room, you know, when you spend $2.1 million a year to put a soldier in Afghanistan or $3.4 billion a year on military aid, that's money that could be used for healthcare, for education, for local communities. So I mean, what I would say to a nascent group is think about like who's in the room, who's not in the room, who are you connecting with on campus, and activism starts locally, right? So if we want to be fighting against oppression overseas, how are we building strong coalitions and movements and building blocks at home? But you know, I also went to FIU in Florida when it was the first SJP, and now I think there's 7. Don't feel like you're alone. Like, know that it's, you know, you have Austin, you have Dallas, you have other universities that have done divestment bills and mock checkpoints and mock walls, and have been through a lot of the stuff, have faced campus repression, and just know that you're part of a larger base and network today that you can kind of stay connected with, and always be thinking about, like, why are we having events? Why are we having a mock wall? Are we moving towards divestment? Are we moving towards, you know, some kind of action or advocacy? Like, what are we doing to kind of challenge and push things forward? That was a lot of shit in that salad. But also, look, when I was 19, I wasn't doing anything on campus. So for me, like, I get out of bed in the morning, constantly inspired. I was at Colorado College yesterday. I was at Louisville. I never thought there would be, like, there's 3 SJPs in Kentucky now. Not that you want to, like, go slapping on stereotypes, but there's 3 SJPs in Kentucky now. So I'm constantly inspired by the work that's being done, and hopefully we'll be able to eat afterwards and debrief and connect. And you know, I know sometimes in America you feel like you're 1 against 300 million, you're constantly beating against a brick wall, but those small steps do create a big wave. And if we want to see change, not in the cliche Barack Obama type of way, but like the grassroots activism, taking to the streets kind of way, if you have an extra couple hours a week, a couple hours a month, don't turn your back on it. So sign up to the SJP list. And if you're passionate on another issue, let's say feminism is your issue, or sweatshops is your issue, that's okay. But we should always be thinking about how we can link up and connect and you know, fight oppression where we see it. And not okay, that's also awesome. Like, we shouldn't just be singularly focused on one issue.
This is related to your little brother's t-shirt. What would you say to people who aren't really sold on the effectiveness of BDS? You know, people are like, what difference will it make if I buy a can of Coke or if I don't? Or girls that say, what difference will it make if I don't stop using L'Oreal and stuff like that?
Yeah, okay, so it doesn't work like if I buy like an HP printer, a child dies in Gaza.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, like it's like the function of boycott is not bankrupting, right? I mean, so if you look at the Kodak campaign and the anti-apartheid struggle, when a lot of people come together, or if you look at like Veolia has lost billions of dollars worth of contracts. It's said that it's, you know, operating the Jerusalem Light Rail line, toxic dumping in the West Bank, and the Jerusalem Light Rail line ended up becoming like a toxic asset. They couldn't get rid of it. So I think that you know, if you look at the Great Boycott, if you look at the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa, you know, they're not carbon copies. They're each are unique systems of oppression, and each, you know, are deserving of their own tactics. But I would say that, you know, when I speak to South Africans in Palestine, South Africa, or here, they're like, look, in many ways you're much further along than we were. So when you look at the 30-year trajectory of boycott in South Africa, or you look at other boycott movements, I mean, boycott is a tried and true tactic. You know, it's had victories. Now, it's not a liberation tactic. It doesn't supplant action in Palestine. But in terms of what we can do to cut our complicity with occupation, apartheid, and settler colonialism, that's step one. It's not the only tactic for us to engage in the international community, but it's a positive, strong, ethical, and effective one.
Any other questions?
What do you, how do you encourage activism beyond the college campus? For instance, a lot of people are active within a college. There's not many people my age that are active than most people here. You know, and keep that momentum going. that you'll see a lot of activism at 18, 19, 20, 21, when they have a position of power, maybe in the 40s or 50s, it's sort of like, oh, I don't want to bother with it. So, and I've seen it in other cities where there are people more active, but I don't see that over here in Houston.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's like, you know, you're not a vegetarian in college. You're like, you know what, like, I really don't want to eat a cow. You turn 22, you're like, let me go, like, just eat as many burgers as I can get my hands on. Activism is a lifetime thing, or organizing. I mean, I understand people have families and they get jobs and, you know, they get consumed by other things. But if, you know, you're sitting around the dinner table talking about how you want occupation to end, or you're upset about what's going on in your local community, you have to do something about it. You have to invest that time. Like, Palestine is not something for the younger generation, you know, like when it's kind of like, oh, it's now up to you. Well, no, it also has to be up to us, right? Like, on specific to Palestine, Israel's counting on Palestinians living in the diaspora, the older generation, to not kind of lift a finger. So I think that you have to keep appealing to the community, and it has to go beyond just the once-a-year cultural event or the once-a-year fundraiser. And we all have different abilities to contribute, you know? So let's say you're helping out with, starting out with an organization, or it's a nonprofit and it's like you're an accountant, or, you know, a lot of times you'll see a Palestinian restaurant that's donating food. I'm not saying that every parent needs to be on the front lines, but it could be as simple as supporting your kids in SJP or the local community action that they're doing. But I think that the local community has to be more plugged in than they are today. And it's happening in some communities. But yeah, as much as we want to take back our campuses as a radical space, there are a lot of people that don't have access to these elite institutions. So we need to think beyond that. You know, particularly in New York City, it's something that I think that is dealt with sometimes in really good ways and also really bad ways. So not thinking like you are the campus, you are the community, you are the people that don't have access to the community, but thinking about bridging that and building forward, even though we still have those obstacles in the way.
What do you they're gonna, I don't know, get stopped on the borders or something?
So like Palestinians
Like
that are
as
here.
far as like Facebook posts, you're constantly being warned about Facebook posts. Israel watches this, Israel watches that.
Yeah, I mean, that has to be left up to the individual, right? I mean, I'm loud, so it's like if I get denied entry, like, oh well. But there are a lot of folks that might be here from Palestine, or might have a lot of family in Palestine and go over every summer. That doesn't mean that like your name has to be on every press release, or you know what I mean? Like you have to be the one, you know, being like, fuck Israel by the wall. You know, so I think that there's like, there are, you know, visibility is always an issue, not just on the issue of Palestine, but in terms of the U.S. surveillance state. So I think that there are ways to plug in that kind of fit within your comfort level. Because I talk to folks who come from overseas, and they're like, I don't want it to kind of disrupt my scholarship, or you know, and so I'm not in a position to tell people to put X, Y, and Z in jeopardy, but know that there are other folks who are doing it across the country. And again, like thinking about not just Houston specific SJP, but there's national organizing. So there's a lot of other folks, I know folks who you know, are undocumented and working on issues and how they navigate that space. So you know, for Palestinians, like there are other Palestinians working across the United States that were born overseas and kind of feel or face that jeopardy. So talking to them as well and kind of having those kind of conversations. But like, no, you know, in a very corny, like after school special way, like knowing we're not alone. And we do have support systems, and we have people that we can kind of bounce these ideas off of. Like if you're going for a divestment bill, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's already been 30 of them. Like figuring out what's right for your local community context, your campus context, is the next step. But knowing that there are other folks out there that you can talk to.
Side note, I kind of was that person that was like, fuck Israel by the wall. Just.
And not even fuck Israel. It's like boycott Israel, because a lot of you know what I mean. Like I joke around a lot, but like even if it's not even about. It's like challenging these structures. So yeah. Thrown out though.
That brought up another question for me. Do you think student organizations or campus SJPs would be more successful investing their time and efforts on campus divestment projects or local activism? Because here we're trying with BDS Houston, we're trying to build collaborations with other groups and other interests to work on local things like de-shelving or FONICIA or national campaigns. But do you think student efforts are, I mean, in your experience, are they best put into campus divestment because the bills are already there, because we know what we're up against, what we're going to face, because SJP National is such a great, they have great resources. What do you think is better for students?
Yeah, so I'm a fan of divestment, not just because of divestment, but I think it's also a really great educational tool. I think it's a way of kind of winning folks over on your campuses, bringing people together. I mean, UCLA, one of the best things that happened to them was the failure of their divestment bill last year, because they had a big coalition of color, and they were like, why the hell didn't it pass? Like, why should we be investing in companies that are profiting off of oppression? This is like 1+1. And so people were even more fired up this year. I think that having that conversation with BDS Houston and the SJP, but so for example, there'll be liaisons in New York City where it's 1 or 2 members are connecting with the local community on the TIA-CREF campaign. So I definitely think that there should be connections and joint mobilizing, but doing kind of what makes sense for it's not like one size fits all, but doing what makes sense for your kind of local context. Because you don't want to take folks out of the space that they're most effective in, to put them in a space where they might have marginal impact. So that's, but I'd have that conversation.
And those are the questions we're kind of thinking through with Resistance.
Any other questions?
One other question with regards to, a lot of people will come and say, well, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict has been going on for 66 years.
Sure.
Right? And we've never been further away from quote-unquote peace. And so, there's no point, right? It's over. And so they get, upset or depressed. They just feel like they can't make a difference. So from your perspective, and this is a question we always get, you'll hear them ask, well, what's the solution, right? And, in BDS, of course, we don't advocate for 2-state or 1-state. We're a rights-based organization. From your perspective, just from a personal perspective, what do you think is the solution?
Sure. And just to pick up on the first part of it, look, in some ways, the movement for Palestine has never been better internationally. Never. Right? And in many ways, things have never been as bad in Palestine. So that, as Palestinians, a conversation that we're always constantly wrestling with. So the disillusionment is real. I'm an angry poet and I'm kind of optimistic. And I think that when it comes with BDS, it's you've had all these victories and you feel like you're at stage 1 for so long. Being at stage 3 feels real awesome. But it's there's 25 more stages to go. In terms of a solution, when people talk about 2 states, I don't it's the 2-state solution is, dying. It's a figment of people's imagination. It never existed to begin with. I mean, it was a project to steal more Palestinian land and resources. So yeah, as an individual, I wholeheartedly endorse a 1-state solution and recognize that it's a compromise. We're not saying get the fuck out. We're saying we all can stay here, but it has to be on the basis of freedom, justice, and equality for all people. So I think that having 1 state, even as a 1 state, isn't can come about badly. So it has to be a 1 state that doesn't still have domination of one people over another. I mean, right now you have a 1 state reality. It's Israel controls the air, the border, the sea, the exports, the taxes, the tariffs, every facet of life. It's a very oppressive 1 state. So how do you get to, and you'll never get to an ideal, I'm not idealistic, we're gonna have world peace and there's never gonna be violence again and we're all just gonna, run through strawberry fields and catch the rainbows. But we sure as hell can have a better world than we have today. And being in South Africa last year, talking to folks, they'll be look, nobody would say we didn't want to get rid of racial apartheid, but we still have economic apartheid. You still have rampant neoliberal racist structures. So even when it's not, the next stage means the fight is over, you're always going to have work to do. So I think that in terms of moving forward, 1 state giving out all the options on the table, is the most sensible way to go. And it's the only tenable way to actually have some kind of resolve to the situation. And then we'll take if anybody one more question, because like I said, you got to go get froyo, watch, I don't know. American Idol is the finals yet. I don't know.
Okay, so in that case, if we're going to wrap it up, I just wanted to say there are 2 clipboards going around for BDS Houston. One is a sign-up list that Nick mentioned earlier, and the other is the Phoenicia petition. So make sure that you put your name if you're interested. Those are going around. So if we're wrapping up, just come find the clipboard and quickly put your name and number down.
Okay, so then we'll take 1 or 2 more questions just so you can all sign.
I actually did. Yeah, that's great. That's what I was hoping. We could keep it going. But I was going to say. Okay, so you mentioned
BDSers, you'll like talk till 3 in the morning.
We're probably get to talk
Smoking some nargile, yeah. How do we boycott shit?
I think that's the plan, actually.
That's good as a plan. I'm easy. I got a late flight tomorrow, noon.
Okay, so my question actually, I think you mentioned earlier that you own businesses and.
Did
you
I
have to
own
make your-
businesses?
Did you say? I think.
Oh, I wish.
Or you have to have a livelihood.
No, I'd be like, capitalism's okay now. Just kidding.
Okay, let's just
Smash
say
that shit.
you're very
No, I
active.
don't.
Oh, okay.
I rent these shitty apartments.
Fantastic. So, okay, so I mean, but you're obviously very active, and I personally feel like I do everything that I can outside of work, with BDS Houston and other organizations. But I mean, how do you avoid, or I think it's impossible to avoid burnout sometimes. You feel so frustrated by an event where a Zionist threw an issue at you or whatever. But I mean, what do you do personally to kind of remedy that situation or kind of get back on track whenever you start burning out?
Yeah, so I'm not going to butcher the Audre Lorde quote, right? But in terms of self-care, is yeah, okay. And but there was a really great talk with Angela Davis about 6 or 9 months back, and she was saying, look, I've been working on prison abolition work for the last 50 years. This has to be intergenerational, right? It has to extend beyond our lifetimes. I mean, when I think 3 of my grandparents are dead, my father passed away, right? This is near and near and affects millions of people, and unfortunately, the continuation of it sometimes outlasts their lives. So, I don't want liberation in Palestine so I can be depressed every day here. You know what I mean? You still need to kind of find peace of mind. You need to find that breath. You need to find that rhythm, and not burn out, because it's not helpful even to BDS Houston if you're really on point for a year and then you just kind of disappear off the map. So figuring out a way that we can kind of integrate this into our daily lives will be much more helpful, because if things go right in Palestine tomorrow, there's still a lot of other important issues that we need to kind of be plugged into. So kind of what does it mean to be a working, functioning, smiling organizer or activist? We have to kind of find a happy medium to exist within that space.
I'd like to add a comment to that. Don't work alone. Even many people who are in a group end up working alone, moving ahead of the group, because you have a lot of energy and you want to do everything, and then you get tired and the group is not with you. There's nobody to support you when you're tired. It happens a lot. Try to come back, and if you get burned out, take a 2-3 month break and then come back. But key is to have a group of people moving at the same pace, because then they can relate to what you're going through.
Yeah, and sometimes no is a strong organizing tactic. Knowing when your plate is too full, knowing when you're kind of reaching that limit,
Actually, I have one question. Sure. For people that don't know you, and a lot of us here are involved.
Dare you?
But a lot of people here are involved in SJP, and you go tour a lot. But let's say you're just doing everyday tasks, or just with normal people you interact with. How do you still try to raise awareness that way?
Meeting people where they're at. I mean, I, in many ways, learned about Palestine at the same time of learning about the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, and the anti-apartheid struggle. People might not get the situation in Palestine, but I mean, a lot of folks, if I go and perform at Nuyorican Poets Cafe, they might not know much about Palestine, but they'll understand what I'm talking about. So whether it's mass incarceration or Palestine, or whether so I think that when we're talking about drones, also talking about how we don't have to go overseas to see militarism in action. We can go to our streets, stop and frisk. 5 million people stopped under Michael Bloomberg, 89% of them Black and Latino. You are specifically targeting communities, So I think that I think that if we could knock on every single door of every single 318 million Americans or whatever it is now, we wouldn't get 100% of people on our side, but we would get like 79% or like 83%. Like, you're never going to get like the Bill O'Reilly types and like the, you know, the people that, like the Tea Party types. But I think that I do have like kind of a sense of believing in humanity in that way. That all the kids that I grew up with in this super white neighborhood are like super down with Palestine. Why? Because I wouldn't shut the fuck up when we were growing up. You know, so I think that it is about like sharing meals and having conversations and there's also another great Arundhati Roy quote that I won't butcher, but like becoming comfortable with your own insignificance. And I think that if I die in a plane crash tomorrow, the movement for liberation in Palestine goes on. So knowing that I literally became a poet because I saw a poet on stage. It galvanized me to go write. So words and actions and sharing conversation can have impact on people, and knowing we have that power and kind of relating to people, not in just like a, holy shit, you don't know about Palestine? Like, what the fuck's wrong with you? I mean, there's a lot of stuff I don't know about, you know? So kind of humbly talking and connecting with people goes a long way. Like minus in poetry. Okay, last question.
Sorry. Okay, so do you think, how do you think that we can protect fellow activists, sort of BDSers, from risks, sort of like, you know, trolling people that come into certain events like this and like maybe take pictures of their names and addresses and stuff like that and send it off somewhere? Is there something that we could do to like say, okay, it's safe for you to sign up?
Don't give those people a clipboard.
I think that maybe that mistake has been made in the past.
Yeah, look, I mean, I would say, I mean, like, don't open your Gmail and be like, here's my password. Like, read everything. Like, you know, making sure like your listservs are secure, making sure your organizing meetings are secure. Like, you know, if I'm having a workshop on cultural boycott or divestment or anti-normalization, it's not an open workshop. This is about us coming together and building and strategizing. So those are spaces that are just for the organizing community. At events, you know, you can't stop people from, I mean, unless it's like a non-picture, non-video taking event. But you're always going to have people that are going to try to derail your actions. I mean, a lot of times people will come to my event and they'll like write furiously for an hour and then like won't ask a question in the Q&A, and I'll totally call them out. I'll be like, you can totally ask a question right now. Like, seriously, whatever the fuck you want. But we're still winning, right? I mean, like, the majority of divestment bills on college campuses that the UC went through. I mean, you have Stand With Us and AIPAC. We don't have tens of millions of dollars in supported organization, billions of dollars in military aid, but we have truth and history on our side. And that's a hell of a lot more powerful. So I would say be cautious, you know what I mean? Like, don't kind of open yourself up for attack, but like, yeah, be cautious and be mindful and know the difference between strategizing and organizing and kind of open events. You know, and sometimes like Stand With Us is like awesome. Like they like if you go on Stand With Us website, or maybe it's AMCHA, it's like all the divestment victories like in the United States, and it's like fucking thank you for that. That was like a really useful chart. I mean, now there's a SJP one, but it's like basically like sometimes they'll make like a really racist pamphlet, and you're like, this is so helpful right now. So yeah, I mean, I'm not worried. I'm not worried about Zionist opposition. I just think that we live in a very, like a Democrat today is a Reaganite Republican of the 1980s. We just have a long, steep uphill climb. I think that I'm never afraid of what I tweet. I'm never afraid of what I say at an event or in a Q&A. Like, I don't have anything to hide behind. I think it's all like happy and humanistic, and like I'm not calling for anybody's death or expulsion. I'm not actually trying to mirror what Zionism is doing to Palestinians, right? And I think that scares the fuck out of them. And you have 110,000 members of Jewish Voice for Peace today. You know, you have Israeli refuseniks, you have Black and Latino and queer and indigenous students, and you know, I mean, like the tide is turning, not as fast as we want. You know, we need climate change in a weird way. Okay, no, just kidding, environmentalists. Yeah, we.
And there is power in numbers. I mean, you know, imagine a divestment activist back in 2002 or 2003. There were like 3 of them. And it was easy for these organizations to single them out and actually impacted their careers or their you know, academic scholarships. Or so these people got chastised. Today, there are like hundreds of you guys. So let them try. I mean, how many can they really impact? And the more of you there are out there, the the more meaningless their exercise becomes.
Yeah, and one additional thing is that, don't relegate yourself to second-class status. Like, you have the right to be a student, you have the right to organize, you have the right to push back. And I think that I don't want to say that there isn't repression on campus, right? Because there's dozens and dozens and dozens of cases. And you have administrations that are like, we have to like hold on to campus climate, and then they basically kind of like racistly attack like Palestine solidarity groups. So know that you have the right to be here. You have the right to organize. You have the right as any other member of the community. And like, don't be afraid to point out those double standards, unless you're one of the members that doesn't want to kind of be out in the spotlight, And I think that sometimes people are afraid to push back, but Northeastern pushed back and won. They still face a lot of harassment, a lot of bullshit from the administration, but there's a lot of cases where an administration or a community will come down hard on people and people will push back. And I think that like I said, back 5-10 years ago, you'd say Palestine on college campus, somebody would call you an anti-Semite. That's not the case today. It doesn't have the power. This kind of, now it's like, let's blur the lines of criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism, but it's failing at the UC, it's failing in Chicago, it's failing in New England. Because at the end of the day, we're standing against racism and land theft, not about a people or a religion.
Okay. Well, we're gonna wrap up, and let's give him another round of applause.
And one last thank you to the SJP organizers and everybody that's putting together the 5 events this week. And,